Welcome back to the Overland Legend. In this video I share this epic expedition in 1998 to celebrate 50 years of Land Rover that covered more than 9,000 kilometers around South Africa and featured over 150 Land Rovers of all types. The original video was produced by organizer Ina Cotton, and most of the narration in this video was written by Ina and participants Daniel and Julia Oppenheim. The original video was split into 3 episodes, with the first 2 episodes covering the northern and eastern parts of South Africa, before arriving in Hogsback, which is where we rejoin the group in this 3rd episode, before they head south to Addo Elephant Park and Knysna on their way to Cape Town. Then they head north via the Cederberg and the west coast all the way up to the Richtersveld before heading back home. In Addo, with its low shrub and open plains, one had a clear view of the majestic elephant, including the babies, who always look as if they don't quite know what to do with their trunks. In Daniel's article with the big dogs on the 50th tour, he tells us about their experience in Addo. As we drove around this 20,000 acre reserve, we got a small taste of what early inhabitants must have witnessed. There are well in excess of 265 elephants in the small park, and they are everywhere. It is hard to describe the feeling of bouncing along these rough roads in an antique Land Rover. We did not feel that it was 1998. We were truly blessed to see these wrinkled, grey, odd-shaped ballerinas of the bush in their natural environment, to appreciate their personalities and observe firsthand the magic of their interactions. The Paul Sauer Bridge over Storms River heralded our arrival in Tsitsikama Coastal Reserve with its spectacular setting. It is situated right on the coast against rugged mountain scenery. Huge pale green breakers roll in from the Indian Ocean to smash themselves on the massive ragged rows of black rocks running parallel to the beach and the campsites. Seagulls swoop overhead, and their raucous cries, and the whole effect is boisterous, wild and invigorating. Misty rain obscured the beautiful aquamarine of the ocean the next afternoon, and the rocks and waves became surging, tumbling mass of white, foaming water. We made our way west along Langkloof, where one can see miles and miles of pear and apple orchards, to Prince Alfreds Pass, a lovely narrow scenic road hugging the mountain on the one side, with a deep forested ravine on the other. It was lined with proteas and fynbos, a collection of flowering plants endemic to the Cape. In Avontuur, we were joined by Annie, whose vehicle suffered a broken wheel bearing shortly after, with Centra, each driving her own Series 2 short wheelbase and Roger in a Range Rover. Near Pietersrivier, we slept next to a clear tea-coloured stream on Katot's farm, situated between Langkloof and the Outeniqua mountains, and enjoyed excellent freshly baked bread and smoked warthog sausages, cooked on the campfire. Leading the convoy the next morning, we were startled and amazed by a kudu that jumped down into the road from a cliff about 3 meters high. She stumbled but ran off across the road, and Daniel behind us had to swerve to avoid bumping into her. At Knysna we marvelled at yellowwood trees, 600 and 800 years old, bought fresh fish at the harbour, and visited the grave of George Rex, who, contrary to local legend, was not an illiterate prince of the British realm.
Ek is net 53 jaar oud en die bome is 600 jaar.
One admires the expertise of the old pass builders, like Bain, when negotiating the beautiful and old Phantom and Homtini passes with hand-built stone walls on the edges. Montague Pass had been damaged by floods, but we used it to cross the mountain anyway, because of its beauty and charm. We saw a narrow gauge railway bridge, which is still used by steam trains, and were delighted by a Knysna lorry flying ahead of us in a tunnel formed by overhanging trees, displaying the stunning red flashes on its wings. You could see the motor cars on the sweeping tarred Outeniqua Pass to the left. On the other side of the mountains we found Oudtshoorn, the place of ostriches and limestone caves, and the final demise of Kermit's engine. The oil consumption in Daniel's Series 2 started to increase at an alarming rate, until after weeks of deliberation, checks and plans of action, the engine was opened up in George and diagnosed as utterly trashed. The dust had been too much for his air filter for road use and had ground itself around the inside of the engine. The Land Rover agents in George worked miracles. They machined the engine, obtained new parts from Cape Town, and reassembled it in 2.5 days, with an air filter suitable for off-road use. The ostrich feather industry boomed in the late 1800s, creating fabulously rich feather barons who built extravagant palaces to live in. The advent of the motor car caused the feather market to collapse and ruined the farmers. A woman in a huge, elaborate feathered hat did not fit into the new automobiles, and feathers went out of fashion. Ostriches are now bred for leather and meat. Swartberg BMW in Oudtshoorn graciously loaned Daniel a Discovery so that he could accompany us to Die Hel, a tiny narrow valley in the Malgas Kloof, reached after 57 kilometers of mountain road in the Swartberg range. The road was built in 1960, and before that the local inhabitants had access to the outside world only by donkey. Peter, with his wife and daughter in their Freelander, joined us there for a while. The peculiar folded rock formations in the mountains of the Swartberg range are fantastic, and one marvels at the forces that can bend mountains. The Swartberg Pass itself is spectacular, but not very challenging compared to Lesotho, mainly because the gravel road is in a good state. We took a secondary dirt road running along the bottom of the mountains and saw one ostrich farm after another. By the time we arrived at our night stop in warm Waterberg, we were covered in dust and very happy to dip into their hot springs. Daniel rejoined the group here with Kermit, as he writes, "With Kermit running smoothly again, we left George and drove west through the garden route to rejoin our touring comrades in Arniston, the sleepy fishing village on the west coast. We pulled into the caravan park after dark and were greeted with cheers from our friends." Standing at Cape Agulhas, the southernmost point of Africa, one realizes that you are very far away from the rest of the world, and you appreciate the part the Land Rover has played in bridging gaps, not only between continents and countries, but between cultures and between people. We visited Hogsback on the Cape South coast because it is reputed to have the highest per capita number of Land Rovers in the country. Although the weather was cold and rainy, the publicity department entertained us royally with a cocktail party, during which Brian had to replace a broken bearing, and a champagne breakfast as well as a boat trip to Dyer Island to view the seals and penguins. The wind was blowing quite hard, making the sea so choppy that the hammering one received was worse than a leaf-sprung Land Rover on a fast bad road, but it was still fun. On the drive to Cape Town along the coast road, we failed to see why Sir Francis Drake labelled the Cape of Good Hope the fairest cape in all the world. Mist shrouded the distant vistas, and Table Mountain was completely invisible. It remained covered in mist for the duration of our stay, but the spectacular views along the Peninsula Drive and a visit to the Two Oceans Aquarium lightened our spirits. It is generally accepted that Cape Point, with the Atlantic to the west and the Indian to the east of it, is the dividing point between the oceans, although Cape Agulhas is the southernmost point. This has been established by comparing the plant and animal life occurring on the west and east of the Cape Point. 26 Land Rovers and the Freelander came to visit us at a braai evening arranged by the Cape Land Rover Club. Our final morning dawned clear and bright, with Table Mountain in all its glory for our line-up at Blouberg Strand. We drove through Wellington and Paarl, where Paarlberg Land Rover laid on a lunch of the best hamburgers I've ever tasted, washed down with a beer and good Cape wine. Boerplaas Wine Farm deserved a visit in order to taste and buy some port. The evenings around the campfire were getting decidedly colder. Ceres, a small secluded valley in the Western Cape, had a campsite shaded by huge pine trees, and I found lots of boletus and pine ring mushrooms, which we had for dinner and breakfast. We were joined by Nico and Sibella in a TDI, Simon and Christine in a Series 2 long wheelbase, Gerard and Tina Marie in a Series 3 short wheelbase, and Johan and Lorraine in their Defender TDI, bringing the total number of vehicles continuing to the Cederberg to 13. Cederberg is the home of a fantastically sculptured sandstone rocks, Bushman paintings, and even a few Bushmen from Botswana now housed in traditional style on a special reserve.
Potjiekos competition tonight, and this is actually the end of the Potjiekos. This is mine. You're now going to see every potjie, and hopefully everybody will give you the secret so I can quickly collect all the votes and win.
A Potjiekos competition was launched, and Jochum swore that the grand prize offered had to be a Range Rover, which he set out to secure by offering large sums of money for votes for his entry. The Range Rover did not materialize, but great fun was had by all.
Nee, maak oop, laat ons sien. Wat het jy daar?
Ruik hom nou?
Ja, ryk
Daar. Verder kan jy kyk na die titel van die potjie.
John, will you please explain to us what you are doing here?
Well, I'm trying to bake butterbreath Welsh cakes. Formulated the OB as the for rolling the pastry out.
De lange with his potjie. Chris, sê vir ons, wat het jy in daardie potjie?
Hierdie is special ingredient X en dit kook met 20 bubbles in 'n minuut. En is baie spesiaal.
Kan jy nie die deksel oopmaak so ons kan gou kyk nie?
Net bietjie, hoor.
Just so that the competition can't see.
that alright? Is dit genoeg geweest?
Ja, baie dankie. Fijn, what have you got in here?
Pork and steak, tomatoes,
Potatoes?
onion, potato and mushrooms.
Well, glad to see most people are so secretive they won't even open their lids for me to have a look at it.
It's no secret, I didn't even know what I was going to make when I started.
Nico, what have you got in your potjie?
We have to find out.
You're not going to tell us, you're not even going to open your lid?
No.
Not at all. Absolutely secretive. Fine.
Secret mission here.
What?
One is working.
Marianne, what have you got in your potjie?
I've got
And then you bought some wood yourself.
Beans, not sauerkraut. Only beans.
It's definitely
It's not
Aha. You think you're going to win this grand prize?
almost feet on fire. I think I have a month.
Joachim, are you going to win this grand prize today?
Well, definitely. I want to drive home with a Range Rover. And I beat myself into the potjie, so it's absolutely marvelous.
Julia, what are you putting in your potjie?
Only vegetables, nothing that has a mother.
Nothing that has a mother.
Nothing that has a mother. Potatoes and pumpkin and carrots, onion and garlic, peppers and tomatoes.
That sounds interesting.
Secret spice
Do
ingredients.
you think you are going to be discriminated against amongst all these flesh eaters?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to see.
So I mean, they said they bottled it, you know, that would be very nice.
And there we have the grand master of the potjie, so we believe.
Have you potjie stick? Oh, we need the tongs. Can't live without my tongs.
Dave, tell us, what have you got in your potjie?
It's not a secret like the other guys because it's going to win. This one's got oxtail in that's been going for about 4.5 hours, and a bit of mutton just put in later. Knuckles. Some mutton knuckles, and plenty of veggies. If you'd like a close up there, you can see I haven't put all the veggies in yet, but you can see some of them.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
An interesting road back to Wuppertal yielded more fantastic rock formations, as well as a shoe factory where we all bought veldskoene, literally skin shoes, for very reasonable prices. We headed for the sea once more, and having stocked with fuel, water and supplies, we entered the sand tracks of the west coast. We stopped at a camping spot right next to the waves and promptly renamed it Whalebone Bay, because a whale carcass had washed out on the beach and everyone collected a whale memento. Although Julia had banned all animal parts from their vehicle, Daniel was not deterred and strapped his whale rib across the front of the roof. The cold water of the Atlantic discouraged swimming, but we all collected our quota of mussels for dinner. We spent 2 days driving up the coast on tracks just off the beach, with sorties down to bays to inspect them. We got stuck in the soft white Cape sand on numerous occasions, even with deflated tires. People who could not drive on the sand before learned very quickly here. Chris and Mariette in their Defender, on being stuck very firmly whilst attempting a sandy rise, exclaimed in distress, "I'm stuck, and I'm in diff lock."
Thank God. Shut up. Yeah, that's like in the yeah. Oh, yeah.
The entire coast and inland area from Wuppertal to Alexander Bay and the Richtersveld changes to a garden of flowers and flowering shrubs during spring each year. But now it was barren and dry. At Spoegrivier we turned inland and continued to Hondeklip Bay and Port Nolloth, where we were enveloped in mist once more. Early the next morning we folded our dripping tents and headed for the Richtersveld and the sun, which was shining very brightly 20 kilometers from the coast. This is the bank of mist activated by the cold Benguela current and the hot land mass. It is also the savior for the fauna and flora in the Namib Desert in Namibia, just north of the Orange River. Two days were spent driving around and exploring the Richtersveld, which is impressive at any time of the year. Towering mountains and ridges of stones, rock and sand, vast plains and valleys, weird rock formations, steep rocky passes, rare tenacious succulents, and glorious flowering aloes. Colors from white to beige, to tans, browns, reds, purple and black. Green tinted sands, a never-ending kaleidoscope of color and texture and variety, all bordered by the river flowing wide and smooth.
Kijk dan.
Oeh.
Pas op,
Put your foot there so I can see what size it is. Iemand, put your finger there. Yes, look at that tail.
Our vehicle sustained a broken exhaust at the manifold, and Willie towed us for 30 kilometers to Sendlingsdrift, where there is a diamond mine with a workshop and a welder. The amount of dust accumulated when one is towed on a dirt road 8 meters behind a Defender is unbelievable. We were lucky enough to repair the manifold and arrived at our campsite in the park on the banks of the Orange River well after dark. Daniel writes about camping at the Orange River. We had camped on the Orange River in Lesotho, at its source. There it was clear, chilling and turbulent, Here, near its mouth, in this dry land, it was wide, bordered by smooth, water-sculpted volcanic rock, brown with silt and refreshingly cool. We were now heading east in the direction of Pretoria, and the night stop at Fjolsdrift was just that. We had a refreshing swim in the river, which was shadowed by an enormous rock face, and Susanne served everyone pancakes to celebrate her birthday. Brian and Kurt started back to Cape Town early the next morning, and the gentle rumble of a Land Rover engine started up before dawn, and moving quietly out of camp, sounded lonely and sad as it faded in the distance. From here we proceeded to Pella, a mission station with a cathedral. Pella is a clean, tidy little village, and in the 1870s 2 French priests made the bricks and then built the cathedral following instructions from an encyclopedia. It took 7 years to complete. At Pella Drift, where we camped for the night, a spectacular sunset set the tone for a quiet, reflective evening. We stopped at Pofadder and bought lamb for 14 rand per kilogram, and Dave cooked it to perfection over the fire at Augrabies National Park. Two days later we were back in Pretoria, and a wonderful tour had come to an end. We had been to most of these places before, but the impact made by visiting all such diverse areas in one continuous trip was astonishing. The enthusiasm and the goodwill encountered from our tour members, other Land Rover owners and the public was delightful and extremely gratifying. We spent 55 days in 37 camps, of which 10 had no facilities at all. 71 people participated in the tour in 35 vehicles, representing all Land Rover makes, except the 101. A total of about 157 Land Rovers were involved at some stage. We travelled approximately 9,250 kilometres, of which about 5,346 kilometres was on tar, 3,100 kilometres on dirt roads, and 1,804 kilometres on tracks or no road at all.